did for his episode where he came on, he did it again, and it's really impressive. So it helps. It makes us look classier than we really are. So.
Oh, I don't think I've seen
Which
that.
art? What did he do art for this thumbnail?
Yes. Hey, whoa! There's Strand. Hello, sir. Let me just say that it has been an honor. It is an honor to talk to you, and I mean, you're very prolific, and yeah, this is kind of like a mark out moment. This is pretty exciting because I've like devoured your work the last several years. All 3 wolf hunts, An Apocalypse of Our Own, I think it's called, Faint of Heart. Let's see, Everything Has Teeth, Dead Clown Barbecue, Dweller, probably one of the most beautiful like young adult novels or coming of age novels I've ever read. It still sticks with me. It's just beautiful.
Don't forget Kumquat.
Kumquat. The only romantic comedy I ever liked. So yeah, when you speak through all this gushing, I mean.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm impressed. I am honored.
We're very happy to have you.
So how did Kumquat do, Jeff? Did it not do so well? Did it do all right? Because it seemed like you were kind of going off the beaten path with that.
Oh, it did way below my horror stuff. It's like the people who read it really liked it, but most people were like, yeah, I'm not prepared to read a romantic comedy from the horror guy. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not a romantic comedy guy either, but I read that. I really liked it. I liked the hell out of it. It was very entertaining.
Basically, every review of the book is, oh my gosh, Jeff Strand doing a romantic comedy. What kind of madness is that? Which kind of kept it out of the hands of the people who would buy a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
The small number of people who are like, hey, I'll give it a shot, and they generally enjoy it. It's got a lot of the same dark humor. You know, if you like my stuff, Kumquat, you know, it's a Jeff Strand book. It's not a complete outlier except for the genre.
Yeah. And it's not like sappy either, right? No. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Yeah, having read, I'll admit that Dweller is the only book of yours I've read so far. Kumquat is on my Kindle, so I am going to get to it at some point. But it doesn't completely surprise me that you'd write a romantic comedy, because Dweller, it borders on almost not even like being a horror book. It's a very, it's almost like a very dark coming of age story. It has a lot of heart to it.
Right. I don't actually have that, you know, most of my work touches on horror. I don't have that many books that I say this is absolutely horror and no other genre. I think probably Sick House is the only book I've written that I just say is absolute flat out horror. Everything else is part of the genre, but, you know, I do a lot of other elements in there too.
This is a minor gripe that I had with Dweller, but it's a logistical thing that kind of, you know, puzzled me. When what's the main character's name? Toby?
Yep, Toby.
And the Bigfoot guy's name is Owen, right?
Right.
And he builds a house for him in like the big thicket area where it's like, you know, it's almost it's difficult to even get through because it's really deep forest area. He builds him a little, you know, dwelling or house, and I just wondered, I don't remember, did it have a door on it? And then if so, can Owen operate doors? I didn't think he could. I mean, it's very small, minor gripe, but it bugged me.
You know what? I don't remember. That was 10 years ago. I don't remember the actual door on the shed. I'm sure I probably screwed it up.
I'm like that guy who gets up in a Star Trek convention and points out, like, what was it he said? Something about, oh, the Romulans don't practice this, and this wouldn't happen in this spaceship because it's... Yeah. It made me wonder. I was obsessed with Dweller, seriously, and there have been times where I felt like, you know, there could have been a part 2 just as easily as there were a 2 and 3 with Wolf Hunt, like An Apocalypse of Our Own or whatever. You know, it's one of the few zombie stories I enjoy because it's so overplayed now. But how they were, you know, forced to live with each other in that shelter for how long? A year, maybe more.
Yeah, it's a few months.
And the young woman and her uncle who live away, you know, in seclusion in the forest in a cabin
Ferocious,
where they fight the zombie squirrel and the zombie animals that are like stuck together through blood and viscera, like like a rat king was in like bubonic plague times. Basically, is what it reminded me of. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
That was the inspiration for that, right?
Absolutely. I thought Rat King from bubonic plague times. Let's make a book about zombie animals in the forest.
But I feel like there's more to be written with those two characters. You know, I'm glad you didn't kill off the uncle. By the way, yeah, this is going to be spoiler heavy, fellas. I mean, this is a big deal. So, your latest book, The Odds, it's about a Faustian pact, basically, right? The guy has to play the odds, and they're against him in a casino. He's probably heavy in debt, right? I've bought it. I haven't read it yet. So.
It's basically a guy he's a gambling addict, and he stays out of casinos, but then he kind of messes up, goes in thinking he'll just blow $50, and he ends up losing just an insane amount of money. And so he's basically filled with self-loathing, saying, what have I done? I have to confess this to my wife and children. I'm a piece of crap. And then a guy approaches him and says, we're play testing this other game. There's a 99% chance that you will recoup $50,000, which basically wipes out everything he lost and puts him a little bit ahead. 99% chance of success, 1% chance that we will break your arm. And he ends up, reluctantly doing it. He wins, gets the $50,000, and they say, all right, well, let's try round 2. Now it's a 90% chance of success, more money, and we break your arm. And he does it again. And then the third one is you have a 75% chance of success, even more money, and once again, we'll break your arm. And he says, no, that's because it's a horrific arm breaking. It's not, whacking it with a hammer. It's this machine that will basically shatter his arm.
Right.
And on the third round, he says, no, it's still, the odds are in my favor, but I'm not going to take a 25% chance of walking out of here with, a useless arm. And then having to explain that to my family and basically undoing all the good I've done by winning all this extra money. So he opts out of the game, returns home, and that's when you realize, the game is not over, of course. And then much chaos ensues after that.
Yeah, that's a good setup. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm definitely going to get this one.
Yeah, I like that premise. So Jeff, have the film rights or television rights for Wolf Hunt been optioned yet?
Yes.
That is good to hear. I had a feeling that might be the case. I don't know if I've read it somewhere. I don't know. I think it was just a feeling. Is there any movement in that regard?
It's like the movie stuff is really frustrating because I've got lots of stuff going on, and it's almost always like deep secrecy. Like,
right.
Do not blab this to anyone.
I see. Okay.
So there is cool stuff happening with it that I'm not allowed to talk about, and there's cool stuff happening with other books that I'm not allowed to talk about.
Right.
There are a couple of them where there's no gag order, but for the most part, it's like just this frustrating, don't say anything to anyone.
Right.
So,
but I think that Wolf Hunt has a lot of potential. I think that has a lot of market potential. I think that would probably do rather well. I could see it even doing well in like a television series. So yeah, good luck with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm excited about it, but it's
Jeremy is too. He didn't know about it until just now.
Right. Yeah. The dialogue is in Wolf Hunt, but really all your work is just it's very punchy, comedic timing. Very, very. I mean, it's just great.
Jeremy's a Wolf Hunt guy. I'm a facial guy.
Now, I haven't read Facial yet, and somebody also recommended, I think it was called Blister. Is that right?
I've not read that one, but yeah, that is one of his books. Yeah.
But, well, I mean, I'm going to try to dance around, outright spoilers, but I love in Wolf Hunt 3 when he's saying, Diane's evil, so you might want to address that sometime. But at least the other leader of yours is dead, and maybe you can have a better life. Sorry that we, burned your place down, but it had to be. I love how deadpan Lou and George are in the aftermath of all that carnage in Wolf Hunt 3. You know, the dialogue is great.
Yeah, the Wolf Hunt books are a lot of fun to write because it's kind of stylized dialogue. You know, they're characters in a book. So I try to make it sound believable that these characters will be saying it, but they get to be smartasses to a much greater extent than someone would in that real situation. They're kind of fun, stylized characters.
Right. It's like a cinematic universe almost.
Right.
Yeah.
And I loved that we got to see Ivan team up with the boys, against everybody's better judgment and wishes. I mean, just everything about it just worked,
Yeah, that was also fun. It was a little bit of, I had to figure out how far I'm going to take it because, you don't want to turn Ivan into the hero in the third book because he is such a bad person in the first one. So I didn't want to lose the idea, I didn't want to make him the hero of the third one. He's still just as horrible as he was in the first book, but they're in a situation where they pretty much have to work together. So,
yeah. Are you still allowed to write like books with the TV deal going on? I mean, there's nothing stopping you from continuing the franchise.
Right.
Literally,
I can do whatever I want currently with it. That doesn't mean it won't stop at some point. But yeah, right now I completely control the books. And
I think Mandibles is the only one that it really just didn't jive with me for whatever reason. But in Dweller, I really wanted to hate Owen after he does a certain thing at a pivotal point about halfway through the book. I really wanted to hate him, but how he just confusingly stumbles across Toby and says, "Friend," and he always makes both the main character and the reader melt with just that one word, "friend." It's great how you cross the species lines, with that. And Zach, get this, he manipulated readers' emotions just like you hate, right? But I mean, man, Dweller is another one that should be optioned. I mean, I can totally see it from point A to point, C. It's just perfect for adaptation.
yeah, there's been some interest in it. There's nothing like serious happening right now. One challenge with it is that it would be pretty big budget because it it covers 60 years, so it's starts I think in the 40s, ends in 2010, so it's like lots of period pieces. So it's a 40s movie, it's a 50s movie, a 60s movie, 70s, 80s, 90s. Plus, you've got Owen, who has to be a flawless creature because...
Right. It had to be like Planet of the Apes level.
Yeah, he's not hidden in the shadows. He doesn't jump out for quick cuts. He'd be a major character. But so there's nothing currently happening with a Dweller movie. There's been nibbles of interest in the past, but nothing going forward. But yeah, Dweller was an interesting one because, like with Wolf Hunt, I could say, yeah, this is funny. This is a good action sequence. I'm good at judging that. As far as Dweller goes, it's like, does the reader care about what's happening with this, creature who doesn't really talk until halfway through and just kind of very short sentences? So it's like,
right.
Is anyone going to have any kind of emotional investment in this, or is it just going to be boring? So I was very happy to hear that it worked out really well for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You didn't know. I had no idea when it came out if people were going to like it or hate it.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be, based on what little I knew about it going in, I thought it was going to be like Carrie, but instead of a telekinesis, a Bigfoot, right? Some kid's going to use a Bigfoot buddy of his to get revenge on all his pals or something, or some buddies or whatever, or some bullies or whatever in the school. And I'm glad that it was not that at all, and it was its own thing, and it was a fairly, I would say it was a pretty mature and interesting and fleshed out story. And it was really excellent. I wasn't expecting at all what it was, and I was really pleasantly surprised to see that what I got was what I got. Yeah,
well, that was done on purpose
Yeah.
because I had published Pressure with Leisure, and it was like, okay, what's your next book? It has to be a horror novel. So I was thinking, what are the different genre tropes? And one of them is, the bullied kid feeds the bullies to the monster.
Right.
I thought, okay, what can I do to defeat expectations on that? And
right.
It was cover the entire lifetime. So it's not a summer. It's not a school year. It covers 60 years. And so from
Right.
there, I built the story around messing with that specific trope that you mentioned.
Yeah, and it was fantastic. I really enjoyed that book. Yeah, so that was the first book I read by you, and that was definitely what.
Our friend and propaganda arm, Frank Edler of Bazong, you've probably spoken to him before, right?
Yes.
He says Jeff needs to use the Wolf books to land and deal on a Cyclops Road movie, and I second that. I think Cyclops Road may have been my first exposure to you, and it was great. You know, it's very strange that female who was raised and born and raised specifically in an environment where everything would go towards training for her to hunt this Cyclops down, and she had never even heard of a candy bar before. That's real isolation there. I mean, it's almost like she made Amish look outgoing, and
Yep.
fascinating character in Cyclops Road.
Thank you. Yeah, there's not been a movie offer on Cyclops Road yet, but hopefully they will listen to this podcast and say, hey, let's throw some millions that way.
Right.
You have to compensate us.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
all CEOs and agents listen to this show, right? So what are you working on right now?
Right now I'm working on the 5th book in my Andrew Mayhem series, which at the start of my career, my first book came out in May 1st, 2000. So this month is actually the 20th anniversary of my first book. And so, if I were on this show around 2003, that's what I would be known for, is the Andrew Mayhem series, because I did 3 of them really quickly. And then I put the series aside, did one in 2011, and then I had pretty much just focused on standalone stuff for a long time. And then finally I thought, it's the 20th anniversary of when the first book came out. This would be a good time to get the 5th one out. So now I'm working on the 5th book, which is called Cemetery Closing, Everything Must Go. And so I am hoping to get that out sometime next month.
You work at a feverish pace. You must have gotten a head start, like early in life, to that you were able to. You're always publishing something while you're working on something else. It seems like, and so you must have your method down.
Yeah, and it's changed a little bit because my first book came out in 2000. I didn't get to quit my day job for 16 years after that. So I kind of learned to, make really good use of weekends and lunch breaks and evenings. So, and I was, of course, writing for a long time before my first book came out. So I had a really long stretch of my life getting used to, maximizing my writing time. So then I finally hit a point where it's like, wait, if I quit my day job, those extra 40 hours a week, I could write enough to, make a full-time living at this. So for me, people are like, my gosh, you're so prolific. You're insane. It's like, I have nothing else to do. So I'm not as impressed with myself because this is basically my day job. This is what I do. And I don't sell well enough that I can be lazy. So I would love to do, a book a year and relax, play a lot of video games, but it's pretty much the end and then straight to chapter 1.
So
But it's better than working my day job. So
Go
how
ahead.
many books do you average a year? You may have said that, but I missed it.
Career-wise, overall, 2 to 3. I'm increasing it lately. So this will be my 3rd book of this year, and I'm planning to do, many more. So I'm trying to really accelerate the pace.
Which book was it that got you to realize that, hey, I can quit my day job and do this full time? Maybe you mentioned that, but I missed it because I'm stupid.
The book, okay, there was no one specific book. It was the cumulative, which is basically how my whole career has worked. There hasn't been any, massive, great breakthrough moment. It's just, hey, I've got enough books out there. And at the start of my career, self-publishing was the worst thing you could do. I would never have considered it. And then I got with Leisure Books, and I had, they published Pressure, they published Dweller, and they were supposed to publish Wolf Hunt. and they ended up closing down their horror line and going out of business about 3 or 4 months before Wolf Hunt came out. And I thought, okay, people are starting to have some success with self-publishing through Kindle. I guess I'll go ahead and try that, because if everyone knows that the book is meant to be out through leisure, they're not going to say, oh, it must suck if it's self-published. So I tried it and then realized that carrying my leisure fan base to a self-published book where it's 70% royalties versus 6% royalties is a significant difference in pay for each book. So it was basically, once I started, getting my rights back and putting backlist titles and adding new stuff to the, my backlog, it was like, wow, my monthly royalties are getting to a point where if I could keep feeding the machine, if I can keep putting major new books out there, I can make this work. So it wasn't any one book that was a breakthrough. It was a cumulative, where what basically happened was I said, okay, I've got enough, because I didn't quit lightly. It was, all right, I have saved, I've got myself a nice financial cushion so that I'm not crawling back to my day job the next month. So what I can do is take some time to write a novel that may not sell right away, which ended up being Cyclops Road, which was written under the title The Odyssey of Harriet, and I was going to market it more as a fantasy novel. And then when I ended up self-publishing it, I changed the title to Cyclops Road to sort of market a little bit more to the horror crowd. Didn't change the content. It's not a bait and switch. It's marketed accurately, but it kind of leaned more into the Cyclops elements as opposed to the journey elements. And so that was the first one I wrote after I quit my day job. The first one to come out after I quit my day job was Blister, which ended up being one of my most successful books, and let me know that I had made the right decision quitting my day job, which was relief.
What was your day job, if you don't mind me asking?
I worked for MetLife doing insurance stuff, not selling it, but doing the payments. And so basically large companies, which we called our national accounts, handling basically, if you work for AT&T and you have insurance, I was the guy who handled AT&T's payment for their employees. And it was very, it was challenging work, very, very detail oriented, but no creativity whatsoever. So, it wasn't like marketing or technical writing where you come home and just say, oh man, I just need to do something else. I worked with numbers all day. So I didn't come home, I came home saying, I don't want to see any more numbers, so I can write a book. So it was a good job in that it didn't suck up any of my creative energy. So I did that for like 20 years.
I have a question. Are you able to hear me right now?
Yes.
Okay. So I think this is great. The perspective you're giving on self-publishing. I think someone even posted a comment here. Ken said, authoring is a self-publisher for a living. I got to consult with this guy. So my question is, what advice would you give to current writers who may have only published 1 or 2 books, who are self-publishing and want to make this a living? And I know you've been doing this for over, you at least published by self-publishing for at least 20 years. But would you say that you have to amass a following first before you can even assume you're going to get money off of self-publishing, or what route would you recommend taking if you were to start over right now in 2020?
Unless you're really lucky, you have to be prolific. So if you think that you're going to wait for the muse and do a book every year or two, probably not going to happen. You have to be prolific, but you also have to bring your A game every time, because you won't have the gatekeepers. And if you write a book that's subpar, no one's going to stop you from doing it. And it's not that hard to lose a reader. So if they enjoyed your previous book and wow, they didn't even care this time, you may not get that reader again. So it's be prolific, bring your A game every single time, make sure you're doing a professional product. So if, I'm very good at self-editing, but I also have a group of 6 proofreaders who get everything, so they go through. So my books are I don't have a professional editor work on them because I'm good at the self-editing, but I've got the 6 people who go through looking for continuity errors, for typos, content stuff that maybe is a little bit confusing, to make sure that the book is as professionally produced as possible. My wife, Lynn Hansen, does all the covers. So, the cover for Allison is on the screen right now, and that's, of course, a cover that catches people's eye and makes them want to buy it, because the cover is extremely important, especially in self-publishing, if people haven't heard of you. And it's pretty much just be prolific. You can't really wait for the muse if you're going to try to make a full-time living self-published, because my sales are not, with any one book, are not so great that I can take a couple months off. I get started right on the next one. And also understand that the streams of income are different, meaning if you're with a traditionally published book, you sell most of your copies when the book first comes out. So everything is geared toward when it first hits bookstores. And so you've got all the advertising, everything you're doing is towards getting people into the bookstore during those 6 weeks that your book is on the shelves. Whereas with self-publishing, the book is pretty much forever. So if someone wants to buy Grave Robbers of Wine, No Experience Necessary, which came out 20 years ago, it's still there. You can get I have a couple of early comedy novels that I haven't brought back, but all of my horror novels are every bit as available today as they were when they first came out. So, when you have a really big backlog of content and all of it is generating a little bit of money each month, it adds up to, a lot of money each month. But I have to keep, putting out new stuff. I can't just coast.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, you think you could drop out so Frank can get in here? And I don't mean that to be disrespectful at all. I appreciate the art that you contributed, and I got your back, man. If you ever want to contribute like that again, and I meant to talk to you more about Lonely Men's Club, but obviously, Ken. It took a great amount of time to talk to Ken about those complex issues he was talking about, and now we have Strand, and just everybody wants to get in to talk to him. You think you could drop out and then maybe back at the end or something?
Oh, yeah, no problem. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you, and we'll get you back here tonight if you want.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Right. Talk to you in a little bit.
So, Jeff, how many books do you put out a year?
It averages out to about 2 or 3. I'm accelerating the pace. So I think last year was 5.
Wow.
No, technically, no. It was 4 originals and then a collection of previously published novellas. And then this year I'm working on number 3, but I'm hoping to get at least 6.
Wow, nice.
And, part of that is coronavirus. I can't go anywhere anyway. So I can sit down and I can binge watch shows on Netflix, or I can work on another book. So
Right.
Are you Midwest or?
I'm Atlanta, Georgia. So,
Okay. Well, they
so
got
all my conventions have been canceled this year. So.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say the conventions would be the big thing for you, right? That takes up a lot of your time.
Atlanta got hit pretty hard, from what I understand.
Yep. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty much indoors all the time. I go for walks, but as far as socializing, doing anything, restaurants, that's all gone. So I sit at home and write.
And Mr. Frank of Bazong fame is now joining us, and he said he was chomping at the bit to talk to the fiction master here. So, Frank, what do you got for us?
What I got, I've been sitting here, I love Jeff Strand. Jeff Strand's in my wheelhouse, and whether Jeff knows it or not, I'm just a big fat fanboy of Jeff Strand. So I'm happy to join y'all and talk to Jeff tonight.
Yeah,
Jeff, you've been on Bazong, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's what I thought. I thought I'd listen to an episode.
so no Scares That Care this year, huh? No.
No, Scares of Care is gone. KillerCon is gone. Nikon. There's this stretch where I have basically every year 3 conventions back to back. And it's almost too much because I would rather them be spread out so I could anticipate it more. But all 3 of them are gone. So that was pretty disappointing. I was going to go to MoCon for the first time this year, and that's canceled. Obviously, StokerCon is canceled, although that one was in the UK this year, so I wasn't going to be able to go to that. But at this point, everything has been canceled up to October. So I've got a couple October events that are still on as of now. Well, it depends how things are when we actually get there. But my summer is clear.
Awesome. Well, I mean, no, not awesome. Sorry, but but so sorry, I'm a little.
Do you get a return on investment for conventions, or you just do it to hang out with your buddies?
It depends on the convention. So something like Nikon, no, because that's just more of a fun social. There's always reward to it. It's always, you're making more contacts. It's always valuable. But in terms of financial, Nikon, not so much, because it's, I'm not hanging out in the dealer's room trying to sell stuff.
Right.
I sell a lot of books at the mass signing, but that's 2 hours over the weekend.
Right.
And something like Scares of Care, Scares of Care pays for itself because you're behind the table the entire time. And people go to Scares of Care, they are there to buy books.
Okay, cool.
So
you sell a lot of books.
So a lot of books there. There's an event called the Merrimack Valley Halloween Festival, and that is up in Haverhill.
Oh, never mind.
It's by Salem. It's right by Salem, within a quick drive. That's run by Christopher Golden, and that's it's I think 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And in those 7 hours, I will sell enough books to pay for, the drive up, the 2 nights of hotel, for everything. That people are insane at that one. That is an event where people will come up to your table and say, "I've never heard of you, so pick the two books you think I should start with," instead of, sometimes you'll get, "I've never heard of you. Which book should I start with?" They'll like, "I'm willing to commit to 2 books without having heard of you." So that one is insane. So it varies.
Right.
Like KillerCon, you don't go to KillerCon thinking you're going to sell enough books to pay for it, but it's a really, really fun, rewarding weekend.
But you go to like film festivals too, right? You're not just going to the writing conventions or whatnot. You're going to film festivals as well, right?
Right. So and those, though, if I've got a short playing, there's not ever a financial return on those. But you're there to make connections. It's fun to sit in the audience and watch stuff screen and that. So
right, I'm just saying that takes up your time, your writing time as well, right? I mean, as far as you're not writing while you're at the film festival,
right?
Yeah.
Something that concerns me about upcoming fiction is that I have a bad feeling that they're all going to try to use their work as a commentary on coronavirus, which is a mutually shared phenomenon, worldwide, basically. And a lot of fiction is going to look uniform as a result. I would rather authors just kind of pretend that coronavirus didn't happen this year. That way we don't risk, all stories being exposed by this mutually shared experience we're all suffering right now, Right.
I know there was a discussion that I was following, and it was, it's irresponsible not to write about coronavirus. How can writers, not express basic reality? But we don't know. Unless you're writing a book that is specifically set in May 2020, you don't know what it's going to look like. I don't want to write a book where everyone is staying 6 feet apart if that's not going to be the case in 2021. I don't want to,
right.
Movie theaters may come back. Restaurants may be back to normal, or they may, until we know how it's going to play out, I'm ignoring it, which was tricky with the odds because, I was writing the odds at a time when casinos were closed, and it starts in a casino. So I thought, I'm just not going to worry about that.
Right.
Maybe 2 years from now, it may seem stupid to write a book where people are going to a restaurant and not sitting 6 feet apart. But
right.
Well, I know how it's going to play out. I'm not going to worry about it.
What's the driving force of every fiction novel, though? Conflict, right? So, I mean, they have to get in people's faces for the plot to progress, right? I mean...
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, if they're going to acknowledge this whole 6 feet apart thing, I mean, and conflict is the driving force of most works of fiction. I mean, it's going to be hard to initiate conflict if they can't get close.
Well,
That's
that would be the conflict. You'd have these awful people that are trying to touch you.
Time stamp, right? Isn't
Yeah,
it time thing?
All these
The
filthy,
whole
dirty.
coronavirus. I'm sorry. The whole coronavirus thing is like it's really time stamping something. Like we don't know where we come out the other side of this, and to timestamp the coronavirus thing seems hacked to me, especially like when we're discussing it, in relation to Jeff Strand, who's relies on comedy for his writing, his horror, and I do that the same thing. So like for me, when I approach something that I'm writing now, like I wouldn't even touch coronavirus because it timestamps something, and I think there's it kills your legacy, right? Wouldn't that kill your legacy to timestamp your thing on this 2020 coronavirus? We're dealing with this, and then even like say a year.
I mean, unless you're doing a Chuck
Right,
Tingle thing, right, where you're banging coronavirus, you know what I mean? Like, then that's probably fine.
Yeah,
I
there's
mean-
no legacy. Like you just kill your legacy. Like you timestamp the damn thing, and like beyond 2 years, like you've just gotta believe, like beyond like 2 years. Come on, like we get beyond this shit, and we just like life continues, right? There's vaccines, and we just we move beyond this. Like so, like say give a 2 year timestamp, and then if you write coronavirus shit right now, and like first of all, to me it seems hack.
Like-
But to do it in any way, shape, or form, to me, it seems like you're going to timestamp yourself and just write whatever you write now out of its place.
Right. Even if you extrapolated, right? Like maybe
Right.
even it would still be, I don't know. I just don't. I don't think I would never want to do
You'll
it.
put yourself
Because
out
when
of-
you look at it, like how many? I mean, there were great novels that came out, like World War One, World War Two. There's even a couple good Gulf War novels. Like, how many good novels came out of like 9/11? Like the only 9/11 novel I can even think of is that John Safran Foer novel.
and I don't know what that is.
It's something like
extremely loud and incredibly close.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's some, right? But I mean, then again, I also kind of think of that as capitalizing on tragedy. I don't know. It just does seems kind of icky. Something seems about icky about it to me.
Yeah, I'm not worrying about it at this point.
Yeah.
There may 2 years from now, there may be an issue where it's like, writing a novel where someone gets on a plane without intense security. That, seems a little bit off. It shows it as a clear pre-9/11 novel. At this point, we don't know what the pre and post-coronavirus books would look like. So
Right.
until we find out that people no longer shake hands in the future, I'm just not worrying about it because I don't want it
Exactly. Right.
I'm not trying to write coronavirus themed.
And we're not Dean Koontz. We're not going to have somebody go back and edit them all so that they read more like modern novels, right? So
Yeah. I thought about doing that with my Andrew Mayhem series, which started in 2000. And then when I did the fourth one in 2011, I thought, maybe I'll see if I can work cell phones into this.
Right.
You can't. You cannot do it.
right.
So I just said, nope. I'm
It's
not
too
gonna
more
work
trouble
that.
than it's worth. Yeah.
So
That's an interesting question. Like, does anybody obviously Jeff first and foremost, but is anybody writing with coronavirus as an afterthought to the not specific? Because again, I think we've all established writing the coronavirus pandemic thing is kind of hack. Is it's going to kill your stuff. But do you to the point of the aftermath, the aftermath of 9/11? Is anybody writing with consideration to the aftermath of 9/11 at this moment?
I have no idea. I'm certainly not.
Right.
I can state that I'm not either. Nothing I'm working on is
Right, we want to
comes close to coronavirus.
But you're writing at this moment, right? Correct. You're writing at this moment, but you're not giving consideration to that.
Right. I'm writing and I'm giving no consideration. I'm assuming that if the world is completely different and never goes back to complete normal, that the story takes place February 2020. So
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's kind of I've thought fortunately for me, like I've been in the editing process or the rewriting second, third draft process for me writing wise. So I haven't had to consider that so much when I'm doing writing, but like, yeah, I've thought like if I'm gonna start writing something now, like how do I even approach shit right now? So it's interesting for me to hear how writers are writing right now, like within like sort of a 6-month window.
Yeah. Well, also because I self-publish, my books come out really quickly after they're finalized.
Yeah.
Whereas traditionally, when I was with traditionally published books, it's a year or two. So you figure for a year or two, traditionally published books are going to have no reference to coronavirus because they were written before that. So I figure for the next 2 years, I'm at least going to have the same level of coronavirus reference that traditionally published books will. And then by the end of 2 years, we should be, pretty close back to normal. So,
Right.
It's kind of crazy. Like you almost have to restrain yourself from writing to what like reaction to coronavirus is until you really fully understand what the full cultural reaction to coronavirus.
Unless you're doing some kind of near future sci-fi thing, but I would still feel uncomfortable doing it. It seems kind of like. Yeah, I mean, it's just going to seem dated, right?
You may guess wrong.
Yeah.
You may guess wrong. Yeah,
Right,
and then
right.
you look like an idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
Certainty. So Jeff, hang on, come back to me. Ben, ask him something.
Okay. So Pressure was your first. Pressure was your first book. Am I correct?
No, Pressure was my first published book was Grave Robbers Wanted No Experience Necessary.
Oh yeah.
Pressure was a few
right.
books into it. Pressure was my first serious book, and Pressure was my first mass market book. So that was the first one you could go into a bookstore and see it on the shelf.
Okay, so Grave Robbers Wanted was your first book. What got you into writing?
I pretty much have wanted to write for as long as I can remember. It's basically, I don't know what caused it because the people in my family are math people and science people. So it was very weird for me to be into writing, but it's basically as far back as I can remember, I've wanted to do it. And
did you have a library at your house though? Like, was there like a bookshelves with books on them at your home?
Oh yeah, my family loved to read. They just weren't writers.
Okay, I get you. All right.
And my dad was a hardcore. He liked nonfiction and he liked mystery. He didn't like horror. He didn't like humor. Basically, he had always wished that I would write something different from what I did. Although he did like Wolf Hunt. But
Right.
for the most part, it was, you should write a good heist book, or you should write something really science-based, and why are you writing this?
I mean, I could see you writing a heist book, though. Don't you think?
Has me?
It could. The
Or-
crime fiction, a lot of my books have crime fiction elements, but I haven't actually gone full-on heist crime novel.
I mean, I think you could do a good like heist comedy, right? I mean, I think that would be something that would be in your wheelhouse. I would think.
I mean, isn't Cold Dead Hands like kind of right there?
Cold Dead Hands isn't a heist, though. Cold Dead Hands is
It's not a heist.
It's a horror thriller. It's basically
It's kind of it's horror crimey.
Yeah, but a heist is a very specific subgenre, right? Where everybody's got their own part to play in the scheme. You know what I mean? So
no, I think of Cold Dead Hands is a thriller,
it's
not a
Ocean's 11
crime novel.
It's not Strand's 11.
Right.
Yeah. I think you mentioned.
I mean, I had a question before because, like Jeff mentioned earlier, where like he kind of considers Sick House as only truly horror novel, but like I recently read Clowns versus Spiders, and I would argue, at least I'm not fully informed on your entire bibliography, but Clowns versus Spiders, man, that's pretty freaking straight horror.
Well, that one I consider horror comedy.
Well, it's all horror comedy, but you do.
Yeah, that definitely has like a sort of B-movie creature.
Well, the
feature.
Sick House isn't though. Is that what you're saying though, Jeff?
Right, Sick House has humor, but the horror is played straight.
Sick
Right.
House was downright weird in that the way the supernatural elements take over, it's in a weird way that benefits the protagonist instead of, disadvantages them. I found. I mean,
Yeah.
you get what I'm saying?
It could be,
Yeah.
it could be like with Jeff Strand. It could be a perception. Like you almost always go into Jeff Strand with like, this is gonna be fucking funny, and like with Sick House, it wasn't quite as just fucking funny as like Clowns versus Spider was. Like, and I might give you that, but I would argue the two are on almost equal footing. As
Well, I
far
did
as
want Clowns
horror
vs. Spiders to be as scary as possible. So I wanted, it plays. I wanted the spider stuff to play, for keeps. It's not a goofy little PG-13 romp. It is, there is death.
Right.
And
It's not whimsical.
horrific.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
The
it is
clown stuff is played for comedy.
It is an homage to Stephen King's It, right? Because I mean,
no,
I
It-
would like
it-
looking at. I would think like a Killer Clowns from Outer Space or something like
Yeah.
that.
but it had clowns and a spider in it too. I mean,
when I walked into Clowns versus Spiders, I'm like, all right, here's Jeff Strand going like, people are freaked out by two fucking, like my experience, people are freaked out by two things. They're freaked out by freaking clowns and they're freaked out by spiders. And here's Jeff Strand going, I'm gonna take those two, clowns and spiders, and we're gonna have fun with this shit. That was my experience with Clown versus Spiders.
Yeah, that was basically it. The actual inspiration, it wasn't inspired by it. It was inspired by an article, Angry with It, and it was an article about how It, which came out around the first movie, it came out around the same time all those clown sightings were happening.
Right.
And I read an article basically about how real live clowns were saying this is destroying our livelihood.
Right.
Like, we're there to bring joy. We have a code of conduct. We're here to entertain children. We're a force of good. And now everyone, people don't like clowns. And I thought that would be an interesting take, because every horror take is that the clowns are terrifying. So I thought, well, maybe in a horror novel, I will have the clowns be the good guys, and they are extremely reluctant to be scary clowns, but they are forced by economic hardship to take a job in a haunted house. But really was the article of clowns losing their livelihood and me saying, hey, what if I took those kinds of clowns and then put them into a really scary spider novel?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, Jeremy, it's not called Spiders Dressed as Clowns.
So this was the novel that kind of put you over the top. This was Bram Stoker Award nominated, if not an outright winner, right?
Yeah, just nominated.
But it kind of touched that, just wanderlust in my own imagination, the way Nightbreed did when I first saw it as a kid, the Haunted Forest horror. I just had a problem with the way. Usually the funny dialogue works to your favor, but I felt like the villain needed to be a bit more serious than he was for something on this scale,
Well, just blame that on your co-author, right?
I will. And I can say that I did write the demon bits, but I'll still blame Jim because he may not be listening to this.
But I mean, as far as describing the denizens of the haunted forest, where, I mean, you got everything from a giant spider to goblins to just whatever. It was cool. It was definitely cool.
You hear that, Zach? Goblins.
Triggered. The forest just kind of springs up overnight and becomes an attraction, right? And I forget what the purpose is, how this benefits evil for this to be happening. It kind of was muddy to me, the concept. You care to take a stab at explaining?
I don't even remember. I think it was. I don't.
This is
think
pretty
we ever-
old, right? I mean, you guys did this a while back, right?
Yeah, this was 2008, I think,
Okay.
or 2007. I see.
Maybe, like, I'm sorry, Jeff, and I'll let you answer, but like, here's my experience. Like, I own this book. I own this book because I bought that cover, right? And everything I've heard about, like, this cover came out because it was not the original cover as far as I understand.
Right.
I bought this book based on this cover. I'm like, that's a fucking cool ass cover. I need to have that cover. I bought it based on that cover. And everything I've heard, though I've not yet specifically read it yet, everything I've heard is like, all right, the cover's better than the story. It's sort of how I've gone, even though I haven't opened the book. So like maybe this is a case of the cover with your wife Lynn Hansen, who is like the queen of freaking horror covers right now in the world. It's like it's almost the cover is sold the book better than maybe the content, and I hate to put it that way, Jeff, but maybe you can answer it that way.
I don't know. A lot of people really like Haunted Forest Tour. I think it's hard for me because it's a collaboration. So I won some battles, I lost some battles. So you can, for me at least, with a collaborative novel, you can never 100% stand behind everything. So there's stuff that I would change where I, compromise, and there's some stuff where Jim compromised. But overall, it's definitely still one of the most popular books I've done in terms of sales. And when it pops up on various discussion groups, a lot of people, oh my God, I love Haunted Forest Tour. It's unpretentious. It's got as much monster action as you'll ever find in a book. So it's probably not the greatest depth of character of my books, but it's probably the most action. So I think it gives you your $2.99 worth.
Yeah, like a Dracula's or something,
Right.
So.
Dracula's the same thing.
Right.
You win some arguments, you lose some arguments, but in the end, the book delivers the $2.99 worth of monster action.
Exactly. Yeah, I read that one. I've not read this one, but I read Dracula's. Yeah.
I don't want to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like, this was not the original cover, but it was Lynn Hansen's cover, and
right.
And to me, it always seems. And again, I have not actually read it, but it seems like your wife Lynn has. That cover has really sold the book more than maybe the story itself, despite what the content of the story itself is. Considering
I'm sure it has. She's in the next room. I feel like I should bring her in and just have her do a guest piece of the
Jeff,
interview.
I don't know if you remember, had Scares That Care, or was it last year? Scares That Care last year. I actually was the moderator of the couples in horror or something like that. A panel, and had the two of you in there, and Lynn was Lynn's very vocal, and I feel like I had to draw some stuff out of you. Lynn is, she's an open book, and she's very, very she likes to talk and express herself.
Yeah, but the Haunted Forest Tour cover, because the book had come out and it had a really good cover by Glenn Chadbourne, but that was just for the limited edition. So it was, I think 500.
How did that originally come out? Ahead of
Earthling Publications did a Halloween book every year.
Oh, okay.
And so,
I remember that.
And they had published Pressure, and they had published a book called Blood Red by Jim Moore. And so, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I've taken off my earbud because since the past 5 minutes have been Lynn Hansen, and she was in the next room, I have called her in the guest star.
Yeah, that'd be great. Hello.
Because they have been.
Hey, we got a bonus guest tonight.
They have been praising the Haunted Forest Tour cover, saying it sells the book better than the book itself.
Yeah, Lynn, essentially, we are blaming you for all of Jeff's.
So I'm gonna step away from the chair and let Lynn describe the process of rebranding the Haunted Forest Tour.
Yeah, let's hear that. Yeah.
Well, what was great fun about this is sometimes I get projects and you want to you really want to convey the essence of a book, right? And so what I tried to create for the Haunted Forest Tour is an image that gave you the feel of that action, giant monsters, and People in Peril, and the feeling that when you look at the cover for the Haunted Forest tour, and you see the giant monsters taking over a busloads of tourists, you coming out of the forest. If that's what you're going to get out of that book, so it kind of matches the reader expectations, you know.
Yes, that is exactly like Lynn. When I had seen that cover, I guess when you would introduce that cover, because I only assumed there had been a cover different previous to that. But when I saw that cover, Lynn, I had to buy that book in particular. There's like the the title of the book and the image of the book so were perfectly married. Like, how could you not spend your $1.99, $2.99, whatever it was at the time? Like, I was compelled to buy that book, and I can't remember any other book in that kind of like history where I was compelled to, you don't judge a book by its cover. Screw that. I'm buying this book based on its cover. Like, there was, in that time frame when that came out, no other book that exemplified that. Like, I'm buying this book based on the cover.
So how is a cover like that built, though? Is it composite? I mean, like the artwork? Are you doing the artwork? Or are you using composite images that you get from some other source?
So I'm a Photoshop girl, totally.
Okay.
But I paint in Photoshop, right? So I use stock images, sometimes my own images, and to create the piece that I want to paint. And then I have an amazing Cintiq tablet that allows me to emulate kind of traditional media. So I can give it that kind of oil painting feel or illustrated feel, because I have this amazing tablet that allows me to put myself into the pieces as well, right?
Right.
And I think one of the things when you work in a Photoshop world is to be able to look and see the potential of things that are not exactly, to see the potential of things, I guess.
Right.
It's great fun. This piece, the cover for Haunted Forest Tour 2, was just a magical experience too, because to have a book that had been out for 10 years, and you'd think that anybody who was a fan of Jeff's or a fan of Jim's had already bought the book. They'd had multiple opportunities, and then for it to come out and be both of their best-selling books for a while, a 10-year-old book, was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so I love, one of my favorite things that I get to do is when I get to rebrand books and give them a kind of a new life and a new potential to reach more readers, because that's what it's ultimately about, right?
it seems that Layla, I apologize. Like, I'm like the half guest on this show, Lynn, and I know we were all talking to Jeff Strand, and Jeff is a brilliant writer in and amongst himself, but like I always drag you into like the discussion, because half of Jeff Strand's success is your brilliant covers, Lynn. So like I'll just drag you kicking and screaming into this discussion.
I'm happy to talk art and book covers any day of the week. And
Check that out. That is awesome. Yeah.
Look at it.
I have to tell you, that piece is actually the my lock screen on my phone. It's like one of my all-time favorite pieces I've ever done.
Nice.
It's pretty awesome.
But I do a lot of work for Cemetery Dance. That was a piece for Cemetery Dance, and it's always exciting when the books come out, because I have like some of my favorite pieces I've ever done still haven't come out from Cemetery Dance. And, so it's exciting when I finally get to share them with folks. But
Did you do a Dweller cover?
I did the original Dweller cover, and then I did a brand new one just this year.
Is this it? Is this the
Yeah,
new?
that's the new one.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
And so I wanted it to feel like, to me, the core of that book, Dweller was actually one of the toughest covers I've ever done, because Dweller is my favorite of Jeff's books.
Yes.
You cry. I just love the story, and I wanted something that spoke to that relationship between those characters, and yet showed kind of the risk and danger to it, and it was just so much fun. It took me way longer than it ever should have, but it's because it was, my favorite Jeff book.
Yeah, that's a good cover. I like that. Yeah.
And
I like the face of the human face. It reminds me of like some kind of like, I don't know, classical painting or something. It's like the expression of it and the shape of the face. It's really
I've never
interesting.
heard of Christopher Clark, but this one's pretty good too.
that book is actually really fantastic too. It's a collection of stories, and first time author with Cemetery Dance, and so much great visual material and lyrical storytelling that allowed for like great imagery,
Mm-hmm.
So but I love I was an author for a gazillion years before I was an artist.
No way.
And then I was a filmmaker for a while I was an artist as well. But to me, making good book covers is absolutely just telling cool stories visually. Instead of telling them in 300 pages or in 90 minutes, you're telling them in a single frame. So
do you write screenplays with Jeff, or is you guys?
No, we want to stay married.
Okay, all right. But you guys both write screenplays separately then?
We do.
Okay, all right. I didn't know if you guys. There seems to be something that goes on in the screenwriting world where there's a lot of screenwriting partners, but I guess it's not typically husband and wife.
Well, I did the screenplay for Cold Dead Hands, and I actually spent probably 4 years trying to get that made as a feature.
Right.
And Jeff was pretty cool. He's like, the book is mine, the screenplay is yours. You can do whatever you want.
Huh.
I'm like, oh good, we will stay married another year.
Nice.
I actually, I want to. Well, you guys really compliment each other's work very well, don't you?
Big time. Yeah.
We are very, very fortunate. I think the best thing about being married to another creative is that we both understand what it's like to be on crazy deadlines. We know how hard you have to work to keep all the balls in the air, and we don't give each other grief about it, So,
Lynn, I think that this one right here is probably one of his
Ferocious. That's a great.
It is. It's an underappreciated novel. I guess it's probably an earlier effort, right?
No,
it came out last year.
Ferocious is pretty recent.
Okay. I was thinking, what if, and maybe you can help sell him on this idea, Lynn. But what if the guy and his niece, it was his niece in this book, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
What if they met up with George and Lou and? You see where I'm going with this? I mean, imagine the hijinks they could get into together.
Oh my goodness. I love Ferocious too. That's another one of my favorite books of his, because I think that the relationship between the lead character and his niece is like just a fantastic relationship.
She's not a brat. That's what I love about it, is she's not a brat. She appreciates the rustic, living, and doesn't understand people from her own generation. I love that. You know,
It's just phenomenal. And sometimes when I work on a cover, I really have to kind of delve into what is the core essence of the book. And then sometimes Jeff says, "I'm writing a zombie grizzly bear book," and I'm like, "Done! I can totally do this. I know exactly what I want to do." And and the paperback of that is a lot of fun too, because the cover wraps around to the back.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see the back of the cabin, and then in the tree next to where the book description is, and the back of the on the back of the book is the zombie squirrel.
I love it.
I think if you hit the print book, I think if you go to the print book listing, I think it lets you see the back cover. I'm not sure.
Yeah, let's
Like
check
you
it
just
out.
click.
Because yeah,
I mean, you could have done that right there.
well, I guess I
There are
could.
many paths to the same destination. See, now
Yeah,
you can see,
right there.
if you go back out, you can see in the pictures.
Right here.
Yeah.
Right there.
And you
Yeah.
flip over.
There he is.
Squirrel.
That's great. That's great, and I love that neither one was a casualty. I don't think that's a spoiler personally, but I'm glad that they weren't casualties of the menace, and were able to get past the merge together like cannibal zombie animals or whatever.
It's. I think the danger is greater when you actually care about the characters and the characters care about each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really creates. I love this book, and I agree. I think it's a book that more folks should read, because it's one of my favorites. I think probably my third favorite after Wolf Hunt. Dweller, then Wolf Hunt, and then.
Where does facial fall in your ranking?
I don't think I've ever ranked facial anywhere.
Did you do the cover for that one?
I did the cover for for facial in the collection 5 novellas that Jeff did. That compiles 5 of his novellas, obviously. I did like section breaks for the interior formatting, so I wanted to have the actual covers for each one of the novellas in the book itself too. So
right.
I created a cover for that one that was very much kind of Paperbacks from Hell inspired.
Nice.
And
well, Jeff, do you and Lynn have time to do a lot of reading, on this side of the fence? I mean, you're so consumed with writing, and Lynn with art and everything. Do you have time to actually read for enjoyment anymore? I have a lot of authors we talk to can't commit to that anymore.
No, I don't read anywhere near as much as I would like to. Like, I've been reading Devil's Creek by Todd Kiesling, and I've been reading it for a long time. It's a great book, but it's just I'm reading it 10 minutes at a time. So being prolific with the writing has definitely cut into reading time, and I'm generally ashamed of how little reading I get done and trying to get better.
But I imagine, if you did spend any, much time with someone else's book, that it might actually impact you negatively, right?
Possibly.
How so?
A lot of times, reading a really good book generally inspires me, not in a plagiarism sort of way, just wow, that was a great book. Now I'm in the mood to write my own book.
Mm-hmm.
So generally it's helpful, but right now I'm just working long days trying to get lots of books out there. So.
Well, and for me, the only books I get to read are the books that I get to make covers for. So I currently have 48 book cover commissions in my queue. So I have a lot of reading to do.
So do you actually read all the books for the book covers you do?
I do. I read, for some books, I read all the way to the end. Some of the books, I read enough to get a feel for the style and tone until I get to that moment where I'm like, oh, this is totally where I want to go with the cover. But sometimes that's all the way to the end. I always use the manuscripts also to kind of search for those kind of small details to really make the cover resonate with the book.
Right.
Even but I read a lot.
So
So you don't get to read much of what you get to choose, though, right? Like you don't,
Well, I
You
get
will-
to choose my commissions, and that's kind of part of the fun, right?
Okay.
I get to choose. I just finished a cool chupacabra cover for another client. I get to if it's because I am so booked on my art. When somebody comes to me, I'm like, so tell me about the book, because I'm thinking like, do I want to read it, and is it something where I feel like, oh, I can totally see where I want to go with this, right? The potential.
Right.
And so I'm pretty fortunate. Like I said, most of my work is for Cemetery Dance, and I work with just amazing authors.
Right. Yeah, that's a good house to be working for. Yeah. So, how many books do you read a week?
Ooh, let's say probably 3.
That's not bad. It's no Jeremy Maddox, but that's pretty good.
That's a high rate. Lynn, can I if I could upsell Lynn a little bit, like my good friend and author Chuck Buda, like he had self-published books out called Pay Up and Die trilogy, and he sought to, like, he wanted to reinvent it and all everything because he was very rookie when he put those books out, and gained some popularity and stuff. And he hired Lynn to redo the Pay Up and Die series of 3 books, and she killed it. She freaking killed it with redoing his covers. Just
BBA.
yeah, like
Right.
she like the original covers of Chuck's books were they were just very like I want to I can't even remember this site. It was like 99. Like you paid $100 for a cover, and like Chuck had those covers. Like Lynn killed it. Like Chuck hired Lynn, and she like absolutely embraced what Pay Up and Die the trilogy was, and killed
There
it.
you go. You just scroll past it, and if you click, you'll see the entire series.
There you go. And the trilogy, Pay Up and Die, and it's Pay Up and Die.
And then Delinquent, and then Bankrupt. So
Delinquent and Bankrupt. Yeah, thank you. Chuck's gonna kill me because I'm his best friend.
Did you do the cover for Kumquat? Because that's quite a bit different.
I did. I did both versions of for Kumquat. Actually, there's 2 different covers for that.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know that I've seen the newest one. I read I read it when it first came out. So
Yeah,
I love the fact
that covers are really cool too, because it's got this like really cool serial killer in it, and like this and as the books progress, they just get more and more intense, and he gets like kind of more and more kind of in your face. And so if you see the covers together, he's a little bit more distant in the first one, he's a little bit closer in the second one, and the third one he is right up in your face. And he actually wraps around his front of his face, wraps around to the back covers too.
Brilliant what you do with that. Especially I've read the trilogy, and like you completely knowing that there were covers already in place, you reinvented that series like perfectly. You totally re-embraced that series, and that's what I was the head of a panel for at Scares of Care with you and Jeff, and just Jeff's a quiet dude, and Lynn, you are not a quiet person at all. I found myself talking to you more, and Lynn, you almost sell Jeff's books more than Jeff does, for whatever that means. But it's brilliant.
That's intense right there. Look at that.
Look at that. Just going it in. And that's exactly that trilogy. It just keeps getting more and more intense. That trilogy.
But it is gutsy to put a character's face on the front of the book, I think.
To just keep, and just to keep creeping closer and closer to him. and it really exemplifies that trilogy. But Lynn does that for Jeff's books, and it's not to undersell Jeff. Like Jeff is a brilliant writer, and Lynn.
No, it's just the book. It's just the covers, man.
Totally covered.
Just
the covers.
It's Lynn Hansen. Lynn in Hansen is probably what your last name should be, because you just
is that you're coming up with taglines for her?
that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty good.
That kind of reminds me of the Resurrectionist or something. The way that is sold, that's pitched. I haven't read it anyway.
We'll see the new Kumquat cover. Pull that up.
There's a couple of that's a romantic comedy, so it's definitely not something. When I started out,
Louise and Thelma Louise and this sort of Roadmap covers,
right? And so I've been a professional book cover artist for 10 years now.
That's the one that I remember. That Kumquat cover there.
Right, and if you flip to see.
It gets a little more Thelma and Louise. That's my consideration for the alternate, like Thelma and Louise.
The audiobook cover, I think, shows was also Cantor licensed the rights. And so if you click to the audio CD of it, the audio version of it, you probably will get to see.
That seems to be the yeah.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah,
all right,
that's great right there.
That's when I bought the ebook. That was the cover I got.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't do anything but horror anymore. So when I started out, I used to do all kinds of different genres, and now I only do horror.
Now, why is that? Just because you're commissioned to do horror mostly, or that's what you prefer?
Oh, it's what I love the most. I mean, Jeff and I actually met at the World Horror Convention back in 1995. So I've been a horror fan my entire life. One of the earliest memories is watching the scary movies with my dad on one side and my big brother on the other, curled up in bed, covering myself, protecting my neck from the vampires. I've always loved horror, and I've been so much a part of the community, and I know the genre so well that I can do horror book covers a lot better and a lot faster than I can anything else.
See this right here has been my experience with Jeff and Lynn. It's like Jeff will everybody's interested in Jeff until Lynn starts talking, and then Jeff is more than happy to step aside and let Lynn talk because she's like the face of everything. This is totally like my complete experience with Jeff and Lynn, and I'm tickled that it's played out this way again.
Benjamin's Parasite was awesome.
Yeah, that's all according to Jeff's plan, I think.
It totally is.
I'm still here. I didn't run off for a break.
Benjamin's Parasite was also pretty awesome.
Oh, you read a book about my tapeworm. That's flattering.
It was seriously. It was cinematic. It was so good. That a lot of your work is cinematic, Jeff. It's like you were weaned on movies like just as much as books, and you got the perfect mix of cinematic and literary.
Yeah, there are very few of my books that I say, oh, that would be unfilmable. They're all kind of like mental movies to me. So.
Yeah, and what I really like about these covers is they're definitely very evocative of the mass market paperback era, while still being feeling unique. There seems to be a trend with major horror books now where it's like they're almost ashamed to look like they're horror books. Like if you look at Stephen King's If It Bleeds, that could be like a cover for a literary novel.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I think absolutely. I mean, I think you have to know where your audience is too, right? And so I think a mainstream publisher who is trying to interest non-horror readers in a horror title may take that approach, right? But when I'm doing art for the horror fan base, it needs to look like it needs to look like the kind of book they will want to read, not something that they might get tricked into reading and then enjoy. You know.
Right.
Um,
So, Jeff, are you going to write a highfalutin horror novel, literary horror novel that you're going to have to challenge Lynn on as far as coming up with the concept for the cover?
No, probably not. I have varying degrees of what is trashy fun and more thoughtful stuff, but I don't see myself doing a big pretentious 800-page thoughtful type thing. So.
Well, that's good, Lynn. You don't have to worry about it then.
I want to implant an idea in Jeff's head, and that with Rusty and Mia looking to move on, and George, Lou, Allie, and what's his name with all the hideous scarring or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember his name. Those four like crossover, and get into some kind of big, muck up adventure. When like maybe Allie's enrolling in a school and so is Mia, at somewhere new. And I just feel like there's some potential for a crossover there. Who cares if it's corny to cross over, or cliche? It's just fun. I think that there's some potential for those groups to kind of, cross over. So.
Right. Well, it has been officially implanted. So,
I mean, do what you will with it,
If it happens, they will know that at 4 hours 43 minutes into the show, that's when it happened.
Yeah.
So,
But,
do you have books that take place in the same universe other than, say, Wolf Hunt?
No, unless my books are direct sequels, I don't make any attempts to
Suckers.
cross the boat. Suckers is my universe. The Andrew Mayhem universe crosses into Joe Conrad's Harry McGlade universe.
So
Okay.
how do you feel about Steve? You're kind of closing in on Stephen King in terms of being prolific. I feel, and probably in a shorter amount of time with the way the short time between releases. But how do you feel about Stephen King, like breaking all the rules and writing himself into the Dark Tower series and all this, and where the Dark Tower, where all fiction is possible, is what I got from it. Did you read the Dark Tower series? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. I haven't read the Dark Tower series yet, but I figure he's Stephen King. He can do what he wants. I would not write myself into a book because I'm Jeff Strand. I'm not quite at the Stephen King level yet. So,
but you really don't like the whole idea of a shared universe thing that a lot of authors do that now,
Yeah, no, actually, this came up in a discussion about a week ago where someone was asking if I was going to do any crossovers, and I pretty much said, no, I'm not that interested in having my own Castle Rock. So, as far as I'm concerned, the individual books take place in their own individual literary universes, and what's happening with George and Lou is not in the same universe as what's happening with Mia and Rusty, and that's not the same as what's happening with Allison, which is not to say it couldn't, but I pretty much have never made any effort to try to cross stuff over. I don't do little winking references to the other books. As opposed to, right now, Joe Conrad is up on the screen with Dracula's, and, in Joe Conrad's universe, I think every non-supernatural book he writes is in the same universe and crossover, and every supernatural is in the same universe and crossover. That is his brand. He loves to say every book is connected to every other book, and I don't do that. I consider them all self-contained completely. Which is not to say that Wolf Hunt and Ferocious could not cross over. I just do not, at this point, consider them to be in the same universe.
Fair enough.
Do you not like having the food on your plate touch?
That's a good analogy, yeah.
A lot of it was just because I discovered that it kind of annoys me when people do it.
Okay.
So, like when I'm reading a book and then it references one of the author's other books, it kind of takes me out of it. It's like, oh, now we're going meta, and
right, like you have to buy all the, in the giant Marvel crossover story, right? You got to buy all of the books to be able to figure it out. Yeah.
That actually was one of the things that got me out of collecting comics was when Secret Wars 2 came out and the story crossed over into every single Marvel title.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, I don't want to buy, 50 books to get the story in the 12-issue limited series.
Yeah, and not to mention that Secret Wars 2 is pretty shitty. Yeah. I mean, the Beyonder looked like David Hasselhoff, right?
Yeah. I kind of like the way Irvine Welsh does it. The thing is, like, Irvine Welsh's universe is basically just a slightly exaggerated version of Scotland, so it's basically the real world, so it doesn't, like, intrude when he does references to other books.
Yeah, I mean, my stuff that is real world could conceivably all take place in the same, but, I don't see any reason to do a My Pretty's Pressure crossover. So.
Right, or to wink about it, yeah.
You know what I loved about Kumquat is that it became a key, story, point that that girl might not live to see how their favorite TV show ends, and so, they appeal to the showrunner. Can you tell us how it ends if we sign a confidentiality thing? That was a really cool touch to that story. I don't feel that I'm spoiling it. My friends here probably do, but
You're not.
That was awesome though. How that became a key thing, on this girl, this sick girl who's crossing things off her bucket list.
Right, and it was kind of inspired by similar events where a dying fan will get to see the new Star Wars movie early so that they don't die before it comes out, or
right.
So it's kind of she could die at any moment, so she wants to find out how the show that she is intensely invested in. But then I played it for comedy, so it's heartwarming at the end. But I also they do make her sign a very strict non-disclosure agreement, and they realize that they can get promo value out of it, and so it's a heartwarming ending, but it's also satire of the cold corporate calculation that we make the dying girl wanting to see our show. Actually, there's a good question that just popped up on the screen, and I will make her talk about this at a limited length because she can fill up 8 hours on this. But the question is, does doing the covers mean that she also does the lettering on the cover? And she has much to say about font choice. So,
you listen carefully, Ben.
Yeah, I remember seeing Lynn like specifically sort of posting about like she was specifically learning about fonts and stuff as far as in the graphic art sort of context. So yeah, it is an interesting question for her to answer.
Well, I love not all book cover artists actually also do the typography and the design, but I actually start most of my art with the typography, at least a draft of it, because one of the things that's the most important thing about a book cover is it's got to be you've got to know if you're going to follow a particular author, you need to be able to read their name and that title small, and yet it also has to. I love it when I can make them when I can make titles interact with the images. And I've been doing a lot more hand-drawn typography. So creating my own hand lettering that I then go and take from a sketch and digitize in to create the title. So like Allison was all done by him.
Yeah, this is a cool cover here. It looks like I don't know, like an old school, I don't know, late 60s Jack Kerouac cover or something like that.
That one's not me.
Oh.
That one's all of Jeff's young adult stuff is through Sourcebooks. So that's their own folks.
Either way, it's still good. It's still cool.
What about facial? Did you do that one?
I did do facial.
The facial one that I'm talking about is a different one, I think. Isn't there a different cover for facial? Like
there's a different one when it came out through Dark Views, and then she did a new cover for the digital edition.
That looks
Okay.
like photography more than painting. How did you do that?
So, ask that again.
Well, I mean, it looks more like photography. There is that. How did you do that cover?
So he starts. So especially if I'm going to have a character on the cover, it's like I go through like a casting process. So when I work on, so when I start with my stock art, it's like casting a film, right? I have to find that character that can convey that emotion and what I am trying to tell in the story of the cover. And then, so for example, and then I go through and that figure is actually a combination of 3 different figures, just as the base, and then I hand painted to create, because it is a, I don't, can I say what facial is, Jeff?
Sure.
So it's this mouth creature person in the concrete of a basement with a giant mouth. And so I needed him to kind of be flat. And so so that's how, so it gave me really that opportunity to really work with the piece to get that feeling, because it's not until you read the book that you realize, oh, he's really off there a little bit, because he doesn't have ears, for example.
Lynn, I got to ask you, like, I mean, just looking at the cover for facial and similar sort of covers you've done, like, I recall back in the 80s and 90s where, like, there was, I don't know if embossed is the correct term, but like there was texture to the covers, like the actual title of facial, there would almost be like a raised effect, like you could run your hands over the cover and feel like the letters actually raised.
All right, gold
yeah.
and Bob, right?
Yeah.
That's the dream.
Like that, or who was it? VC Andrews had like the cutaway things where there was like partial cutaways of the actual cover to another
Like
page.
step back covers, yeah.
Stuff. Yeah. Like, do you pine to do that stuff? Is that stuff impossible now, or is it cost prohibitive now? Like, what do you know about the contrast between doing covers like that, like sort of a step up on visual and even textural effects from now as opposed to 20, 30, 40 years ago, however long we'll go with about now.
Gold foil is always the dream, right? Or red foil or whatnot. And so when you get to some of those kind of beautiful high-end limited edition books, I get to design for that foil embossed image that's going to be on the cover for those limited editions, and they are outside the cost of those is definitely outside the range of a regular book. I would say they're really now limited to the super big publishers and the limited edition publishers. But it's so like Thunderstorm does some beautiful work like that. So yeah, it is fun because you can kind of emulate that. I can still emulate that in some of the work that I do.
So I imagine it's sort of like in this day and age, it's kind of up to what the publisher is willing to invest in, and I'm sure since it's I've heard the tales of like it was nothing to sell 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 books back in the 80s and 90s, and so maybe the cost of doing that was a little bit more accessible than it is nowadays, because the amount of books to print that way as to what's going to be sold makes it less accessible.
Yeah, I've never had the embossed letters. When I got the cover flats for the leisure edition of Pressure, which is just the cover, the big part of the marketing, the letters were raised. I was like, oh my gosh, I get raised letters on my cover. And then when the actual book came out, they weren't raised. Like, oh, that sucks. That was bait and switch.
Yeah, it's a rough. I mean, but I guess you come at the tail, like you weren't in the VC Andrews age and the.
No, I was in the
you're
2000s, so I
you
I
were.
missed the 80s and 90s by a couple
You missed
decades.
it. I guess that would be a more golden age, especially with book covers. You know, where everybody was willing to shake hands. Who was it? Was doing the hologram covers. Was that
Rick Hodala.
Yeah, Rick Hodala. Yeah, those those. I bought a Rick Hodala. That was my first Rick Hodala book, just because he had that 3D hologram book on his cover, and I guess
By
just
the way, that book is horrible.
it might was a Cold Mirror. I forgot what the title even was.
No, there was
Night
that
Stone.
one, but you're probably thinking of Night Stone.
Cold Whisper. I don't know. I remember I picked that book. Actually, it's kind of a crazy, but when the World Trade Center was first bombed, because I'm from New Jersey and I was actually going to school in Manhattan at the time. When the World Trade Center was first bombed, and when they reopened it, there was a bookstore, great bookstore at the time in the World Trade Center, and everything in the bookstore when they reopened was 50% off. And I was going because I was going to college just a few blocks from the World Trade Center, and I would go over to the World Trade Center in this bookstore and just buy everything, because everything in their store, because it was essentially smoke damaged, the whole store is 50% plus off. And I would and that was one of the books. I'm like, oh my god, look at this with this cool ass 3D hologram cover. I gotta have this. And it was a Rick Hodala book, and that was like the book. When I read it, was like it wasn't as cool as the cover, but Rick Hodala sort of has a like it's
books.
fun. I have this story of a Rick Hodala book so many years later.
You know what the trend is now, though, with covers, or at least in the small press and self-published, it seems a lot of them tend to do the matte finish. Is it matte or matte?
Yeah, man.
Matt.
The really smooth, like grainy feeling of the cover. It's nice, it's cozy, but I've noticed that's kind of the trend now, not the embossed like letters coming up, raising up off the cover almost like you're talking about.
I mean, you don't
all
even
of
see
mine
big
have that.
publishers doing a bunch of expensive. Well, I mean, they don't do the embossed stuff anymore. It doesn't seem like, but you do see some where they have like kind of like a. I don't know. They do some fancy looking covers, but it's a kind of a different printing process. Like some Haruki Murakami covers seem to have some pretty fancy looking covers. Expensive printing is what I'm getting at.
When I bought IQ 84, like my hardcover edition of that has like this weird butcher paper cover over it.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
So, we got anything else to ask Jeff and Lynn? I don't want to keep them all night, but it's been a pleasure. Anybody else have anything for them? Or?
Is there anything else coming out that you want to plug, Jeff?
Well, the 5th book in my Andrew Mayhem series, which is called Cemetery Closing, Everything Must Go, will be out sometime in June. So as far as the plug, I will plug The Odds, which is right up on the screen now, and that's my most recent. It is a fast-paced, high-octane thriller with a dark sense of humor, covered by the lovely and talented Lynn Hansen.
Buy it.
Okay. And Lynn, do you want to plug where you post up your art?
People can find me all over the interwebs at Lynn Hansen Art on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, lynnhansenart.com. And if they go to my website, they can also sign up for my newsletter, where I give away a free downloadable, printable calendar every month. So.
Okay, so that was
nice.
Jeff Strand and Lynn Hansen.
Thank you all for your time, and you guys are doing great work, and we appreciate you stopping by to spread the good word, with us lowly peasants.
Right, we'll be back anytime.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for the trash.
Yeah. Keep
Yeah,
up the
we'd
good
be-
work, guys.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be very happy to have you on again in the future.
Jeff and Lynn, can I look forward to seeing you two again at Scares and Cares 2021 now?
2021. Our
Beautiful.
hotel reservation and the dealer's table carried forward, so we will be there
Forward.
next year.
I will bug Joe Ripple to stick me right next to you next year, 2021.
All right.
It is amazing. Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, I should probably ask one controversial question because this whole discussion has been kind of gushy and like, you know,
Just don't do it. Just let him go. Just let him go.
Well, we like controversy.
Give it to give it to
just one thing.
yeah.
Can we agree, Jeff and Lynn, that there should be less sniping in social media and more celebrating good books and good art in these writer communities? Can we at least agree on that?
How can that be controversial?
It
Yeah.
can be.
Apparently, it is controversial.
Yeah.
You'd think it wouldn't be, but it
We
fucking
have-
is.
Lynn and I work really well together, but her social media presence is no politics, all positive, and mine is I am happy to snipe, and I try to keep it overall positive. I'm not a
But you
whiny.
don't snipe at other people.
I don't-
You don't snipe at other authors.
I don't come into people's pages and cause problems, but I do not have a all positive all the time outlook, unlike Lynn Hansen.
Maybe that's why you're popular, and all these people that go after people like me like aren't popular because they're spending all their time commenting on people's posts.
Yeah, I will post negative stuff on my own page, but I don't go into other people's and say, "Oh, that book sucked."
Yeah.
I'm actually, my rule is I will not, if someone says, "Oh, I loved this book," I'm not going to go in and say, "Oh, I thought it sucked." But if someone says, "Boy, that book was a piece of crap," or movie, I'm always happy to come and say, "Really, I loved it." So I will Pollyanna up somebody's thread. But
That's a good rule, I think. Yeah.
And I'm just too fortunate. I have so many cool, good things that happen in my life all the time. But there's no time to spend wasting it talking about the other stuff that may or may not happen as well.
Good for you. Most of the things we worry about, they don't happen the way we think they will anyway, right?
Right.
But yeah, good for you all, and you know, keep up the good work. Like I said, I had to get at least one semi-controversial thing in there because this has been almost bordering on sycophantic. But I'm just a big fan of you know, your work. So
all right, so yeah, we will skip out quickly before you come up with a legitimately controversial question.